Hey, what's good, everybody? Welcome back for more Sea Bass with Dill. Today, we're gonna be doing some barbecue beef ribs. Now, I know a lot of people do pork, but there's a lot of people who don't eat pork. There is another option, and beef ribs are a great substitution. Now, a lot of people like to use a smoker. I personally don't own a smoker, so how can I get some nice, tender, juicy ribs that might have a little bit of smoke flavor and are gonna give me what I'm looking for when it comes to ribs? Well, that's what we're gonna get into today. But before we get into that, please like, subscribe, share, hit the bell for the notifications so you can get all of these recipes that I'm bringing out to you guys. All right, so our ingredients that we have today, pretty straightforward for what you might find when you're doing ribs, whether you're doing them on the smoker or you're gonna do them in the oven like we're doing today. Since we're doing them in the oven, we're not gonna have a spritz, but that's why we have our apple juice. We'll put that in our braising, our cooking liquid. We've got some Better Than Bouillon beef base here. That's gonna be to make a quick beef stock, just to add flavor to complement our beef ribs, right? The star of the show, we'll get into those in a minute. We've got mustard that we'll be using as a binder. So the mustard as a binder, it's just to help that rub stick to the meat. Yes, there's some natural moisture on there, but we really wanna lock it in. You don't taste the mustard at all. It cooks out, so to speak, but our rub is where our flavor is gonna come from, as well as the meat. The mustard's not gonna affect it. But if you have issues with using mustard, you can certainly use olive oil or canola oil or some other thing that you might like to use as a binder instead. We've got some Sweet Baby Ray's barbecue sauce. Now listen, if you have your own barbecue sauce that you like to make, certainly use that. If there's another brand that you like to use that. And we've got our rub here, right? I know everybody has their own favorite rubs that they like to use. Maybe you create your own, maybe you buy one, whatever. This is mine that I made. Salt, pepper, garlic powder, onion powder, heavy on the Ancho Chili Powder and smoked paprika because I want to develop some of those smoked flavors that I'm not going to be able to get from the grill. There's some oregano, some dried thyme, a few other things in there as well. So our beef ribs, right? For those of you that don't eat pork, this is a great option for you. Size-wise, we're a little bit more narrower than baby backs, right? If they're pork ribs or even pork spare ribs, they can get a little bit wider than that. These are pretty narrow. We do have quite a bit of fat and some connective tissue here that's on these bones and in between the meat. So we're gonna trim that up just a little bit to get rid of that connective tissue in here so that when we cook these, they end up being nice, juicy, tender, and we don't have to struggle getting them off the bone. So let's trim those up and we'll get right to it. So as I mentioned, we got a lot of, there's fat and some connective tissue here, right? So if we have our bone right here, is a lot of thick fat here. We've got a little bit here on that meat. What we wanna do is clean up the meat here. So you're gonna need a really sharp knife. Find the easiest way to do this. If you hold it like this, they're pretty pliable and bendable. And we're just gonna go right down here and we just wanna slice that off. We gotta be careful. We don't wanna get, really any of the meat on there because that's why we're cooking these ribs, is for the meat, right? So look, very simple, just like that. And we're just gonna go down and clean these up. Now you could take a little bit off the bone if you like as well. But again, we just wanna get rid of any excess fat. Now I like the fat, I'll be honest. It's one of my favorite parts. That being said, there is such a thing as too much. So we're just gonna go right down these ribs, like so. And just expose that meat, like so. Just like that. Okay, so we've got all of our meat exposed here. We've got most of that connective tissue, a little bit of that membrane, that fat off of there as well. So now, right, you can save that if you want, render it down, but now it's time to season up our ribs. All right, as we talked about, we'll use a little bit of mustard for our binder here. It doesn't have to be a lot, right? Just a little bit. Massage this all in. Pretty easy. We're gonna season these up really heavily, right? We wanna get all this in, everything covered. Let's do the other side. A bit more of our binder. Doesn't have to be much. Like I said, we're just gonna get this covered so that way our rub. For our stock, it's super simple. 1 pretty big tablespoon of our better than bouillon beef base, and 1 quart of hot water. And all we're gonna do is just mix this together until that's dissolved. Now you could just as easily buy a quart of beef stock from the store and use that. But I've always got this better than bouillon on hand. I use it often, so it's just easier. So standard hotel pan, baking pan, whatever you got. It can be glass, it can be foil, it doesn't matter. As long as we can set our ribs in there, and then we're gonna cover it. So we got our quart of beef stock that we just made. And then we're gonna add in a little bit of apple juice, about 2 cups of apple juice. That's just gonna add a little bit of extra flavor, some sweetness to help get into those beef ribs. Apple and beef is a great combination, so that's why I'm using that. Next, I've got a rack. We're just gonna put this in here. I don't want those ribs to sit right in the liquid, but we want that liquid to steam and help cook. Now we'll take our seasoned racks of ribs. We'll add these to the pan. Finally, we'll just cover this with some aluminum foil. Okay, we've got our pan foiled up. Let's go ahead, get this in the oven, 350 degrees for 1 hour. All right, ribs have been in for an hour. Now we're gonna drop that heat down to 250. And just like that, through the magic of editing, it's been 3.5, 4 hours. We're gonna pull those ribs out of the oven. Now, these just came out of the oven, so obviously it's very hot. Because we've got liquid in there, there's gonna be a lot of steam, so just be careful when you peel this foil off. You don't wanna burn yourself with any of that steam. Get those. Those look amazing, amazing. They're gonna be super tender, nice to the touch. But what we wanna do, we're gonna let these cool off for just a little bit. They're very hot, they're gonna be very tender. These are gonna fall right off that bone. Okay, so our ribs, we let them rest for a little bit. They're starting to stiffen up, firm up a little bit. Tasty. I just took the foil that I used to cover the baking pan, put that onto a sheet tray. And now it's just time, we're gonna put a little bit of barbecue sauce on here, like so. As much or as little as you like. If you're a saucy kind of person like me, maybe you wanna use a little bit more. If not, you can use a little bit less. Then I'm just take a little brush here, and we're just gonna paint this on here. We'll get it nice and coated and covered. Because of all the sugar in the barbecue sauce, this is gonna caramelize up really, really nice. That's why we've got it on a broil. We're gonna throw these in the broiler just until it starts to bubble. 2, 3 minutes, maybe 5 at the most. Man, look at these ribs, guys. That was literally 4 minutes. 4 minutes were nice and caramelized. They smell amazing. Look, you can add more sauce if you want to. I'm not going to. I don't think it needs it. The only thing we have left to do now is taste test. But look at this. Look how tender this is. Right off the bone there. Right off the bone. All right, guys. I mean, they're still smoking. They're so hot. And, like I said, they're going to fall right off the bone. They've already fallen off the bone. Bone's more for presentation at this point. First of all, it's very hot. Second of all, that smoke from using the Ancho Chili Powder and the smoked paprika comes through great. We've got a nice thick layer of seasoning on here. Obviously, it's very tender. And then just a slight sweetness from that barbecue sauce. I want to get another bite. It's so freaking hot. But look, I don't care. Here we go. Oh my God. You see how tender that is? Look, you don't need a lot of sauce. If you like sauce and you want it, go for it. But just that subtle sweetness with all the rest of these spices. Amazing. Easy ribs in the oven at home. Until the next dish, y'all.